Good morning and welcome to today's reflection. Our reading today is from Luke chapter 8, verses 40 to 56. In this passage we hear of two miracles which occur, but we also hear of distractions. Now when Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. And then a man named Jairus, a synagogue leader, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him for him to come to his house, because his only daughter of about 12 was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowds almost crushed him, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. She came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out from me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at his feet. In the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she'd been instantly healed. Then he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue leader. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe, and she will be healed." When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him except Peter, John and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and at once she stood up. Then Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. We all have things which niggle us, and one of the things that I find frustrating is being interrupted. It doesn't matter whether I'm in the middle of something really important or something that most people just wouldn't bother about. But once I'm focused on a task, I want to keep going until it's done. In this passage, we hear about a parent, Jairus, who has a 12-year-old daughter who's desperate because she's dying. His only hope is in Jesus. So this man embarks upon a mission: get Jesus to his house and his daughter will be healed. But there were distractions on this journey. Distractions that would hinder the arrival of Jesus. First, there was a large, unruly crowd who slowed him down. And then there was this woman. She secretly slipped in behind Jesus, getting so close to touch the hem of his garment. The woman knew just by touching Jesus' cloak, she could be healed of a 12-year-old ailment. The same amount of time as this young girl had been alive. The healing for her was instant, but what happened next was really time-consuming, and a distraction that Jairus would have hardly been able to watch unfold. But Jesus knew exactly what had happened, and he wanted to know who touched him. So he asked the crowd who it was. But this distraction wasn't just felt by Jairus, but also the disciples were worried by it. Those who knew where Jesus was supposed to be going would also know that each minute that passed could cost this young girl her life. But there in this delay, there was a blessing we can all learn something from. The woman knew just by touching the hem, she was risking so many things. She was in breach of cultural, social restrictions. So she creeps through the crowd and wants to be unnoticed. And there are times that none of us want to be noticed, times where we want to be invisible, but just to quietly get on with what we're doing. The question Jesus asked seems ridiculous. There's a huge crowd of people, and there's no doubt that they would have been bumping into each other. No social distancing in a crowd like this. This is what my children would have described as crushy-pushy, the crowd crushing and pushing you along. What Jesus wants, an answer. And he obviously has a good reason for this. He's persistent. But I don't think he was really delaying an urgent visit to the house of Jairus just to learn who touched him. You see, the delay was good for the woman who'd been healed. And there, in a few words, Jesus tells her something that we all long to hear. He tells her she's his daughter. She tells her that she's precious to God. He tells her how her faith can make a difference, how she can be healed, and how she can experience God's peace. The woman who society had decided was second class, Jesus wanted her to know, you are precious, you are loved, and you were chosen, and now you're healed. But all these things came with something else. They came with no guilt attached. So why would that want to stay anonymous? Because Jesus wanted everyone to learn from this woman's faith. He wanted people to know how faith can be personal, but actually it's also meant to be public. We declare with our mouths, but experience it in our hearts, and we know it in our minds. And then the devastating news arrives. Jairus' daughter has died. Mourners were already there. Tears would be falling, and Jesus is saying something that leaves people mocking him. She isn't dead, she's asleep. Now, while Jairus' faith is great, others around didn't share it. And so as this young girl is raised to life, the news would spread of this miracle. And the parents were told, don't tell anyone what's happened. So every detail would then become second-hand information. There would be speculation. So even when things interrupt our hopes, our dreams, our plans, God has a way of making things work so we can give him the glory. Jesus didn't bless and heal the woman at the expense of the young girl. A delay can bring a blessing that we can't see at that moment. Because when we face problems, that's where we live. We live in the moment and we can't see the bigger picture. The UK has seen more people exploring faith over the past few weeks than it has done in years. People desperately looking for something that gives us hope. We're impatiently waiting. But let's wait with anticipation that God can do something so much more than we could ever imagine. Let's place our complete trust in him to work out his plan and fulfill his promises. He goes before us. He walks beside us, and he will always be there to pick us up when we fall. Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And while we might get easily distracted and lose our purpose and momentum, Jesus knows what we need, and his timing is always perfect. Amen.